I watched Trump's meeting with Mark Rutte today, so you don't have to, and here's my overview, and I did finally add up all of the Bidens that I've been counting since July 1st. All right, so today they spoke for about 35 minutes. He mentioned Biden on 6 different occasions and Obama twice. Now, what I did is I went back to July 1st when I started counting the number of Bidens and just added up all the ones that I have in my notes. I didn't watch every single speech he said, and I'm sure that I'm not 100% accurate on this, but since July 1st, I counted 203 mentions of Biden. That puts his BPM, or his Bidens per month, at over 50 Bidens a month. That's almost 2 a day. Let's get into the meat of it. He starts the press conference by saying that he's canceled his meeting with Putin that was scheduled to happen in Hungary this year. Now, you might be wondering why, and the reason he says is after his last phone call with him, he did not think that there was anything productive that they could do. Again, he promised this war would be over on day 1. In fact, he actually promised it would be over before he even got into office. In fact, he promised it would be over the day after the election. Because he is the master negotiator, he claims again that he has already stopped 8 wars, and he can't seem to remember any of them, so he just mentions India and Pakistan, and Mark Rutte has to come in and say, oh yeah, also Armenia and Azerbaijan, and he's like, oh yeah, that one was supposed to be impossible. He says he doesn't want to give Ukraine Tomahawk missiles because they take 6 months to a year to learn how to do, and it would take too much time. Now, I'm just going to remind you, he's been in office for over 9 months now, so had he just given them the missiles right at the beginning, something that he was able to do if he actually wanted to end the war on day 1 like he said, then they would have already been trained on these in the timeline that he gave, but he says that he doesn't want to because it's going to take too long. I know he says this all the time, but 4 times in this meeting, he said that had he been president, this war would have never happened. He also says that $18 trillion has been poured into our country in investments. And then he will later say that a lot of that is coming from tariffs, which I will remind you again is not money being poured into our country. It's your money being given to his government. He says he's not going to negotiate on this shutdown again because the only thing Dems want is $1.5 trillion to give illegal immigrants healthcare, which again is just not a thing. Additionally, he starts bragging about his ability to shoot boats out of the water that are traveling 40 to 50 miles an hour. We have supersonic missiles that hit other supersonic missiles on the perpendicular in the middle of the air. If you don't know anything about this, you can look up the THAAD missile, THAAD. This is an air defense system that travels around on the back of a truck. The missiles shoot up, they spin around as they're locking on their target, and then they shoot at supersonic speeds to shoot other missiles out of the air at supersonic speeds. He knows nothing about air defense. He knows nothing about the United States military. He knows nothing about the United States military's capabilities, and he's bragging about being able to hit a boat going 40 or 50 miles an hour. That is insane. Oh yeah, and to justify all that, he says he has legal authority to blow any boat he wants out of the waters in international waters because it's not on land. He also says that every boat, of course, saves 25,000 American lives, and he's now saved hundreds of thousands of American lives by blowing up boats that he can't prove anything that's on them at all. He also says again that 300,000 people a year die from drug overdoses when even his own cabinet is saying that it's 80 to 100,000 a year, which is a much more accurate number because they don't want to go to jail when he eventually gets put on trial for all of the lies and fictitious arguments that he has given to the American people as fact, which is all that he does. Again, none of this is real. If you watched my video yesterday, none of this is real. And when I say that, I'm not just saying he's lying. I'm saying that nothing he says fits in with the scope of reality as anyone with any sort of intelligence could actually see it, right? He lives in a different multiverse separate from what is going on here. So nothing that he's saying even correlates to what's actually going on in the reality of this country. Oh yeah, regarding these drugs that are coming in by boats too, you might remember that previously I've mentioned that he's mentioned it multiple times. He calls them water drugs. Today he called them all 3 of these things. He called them ocean drugs, sea drugs, and drugs by sea. I mean, ocean drugs is at least better than water drugs, but I mean, I'm not really on board with either one. In response to a question about him tearing down the White House with a bulldozer, he says, after a tremendous amount of study that was done with many great architects, they determined that not much of the East Wing was left, so that's why they're tearing it down. As part of him talking about how not much of the East Wing was left, he talks about when it was built and then all of the additions that have been added to it over the years. And then I guess he's just basically claiming that the original building, there's not much left. But if you look at the original building of the White House, it doesn't have an East or a West Wing. So all of that is part of the White House. It's just add-ons. You might also remember before that he said this ballroom was going to cost $250 million, and then he sued the DOJ for $230 million. Interesting how those numbers line up. Today he said the ballroom is going to cost $300 million for a building that's empty space. It's going to cost $300 million. He also says that he's going to pay for the whole thing along with other donors who he calls great patriots. And then he says that the U.S. taxpayer is going to pay nothing for this, but that the military is heavily involved in this. So somehow the U.S. military is going to be heavily involved in building a ballroom as part of the White House, but the American taxpayer will pay nothing for that, even though the military will be heavily involved, which makes a whole lot of sense. Last couple things about this ballroom, because I'm honestly sick of this. He says that the ballroom has gotten incredible reviews. And then a reporter says, hey, you haven't really been transparent about what's going on with this and about construction being started in the White House or anything like that. And he says, we've been more transparent than any president in history. You're just a third-rate reporter. That's why you don't know anything about it. He says that if Biden was even a president, if he was even a president, he was the worst president ever, but really he had no idea what was going on. So I guess he just wasn't a president. Again, he knows nothing about the history of this country. He couldn't tell you anything about Woodrow Wilson or about his last couple of years in the White House at all. He couldn't tell you any of that. He says the president of Colombia is a thug and they make cocaine and they have cocaine factories. And then he says that Spain is not a team player because they're not paying 5%. No country was paying 5% into NATO, including the US. We paid about 3.9%. And as far as I can tell today, still, even after his claiming that every country is paying 5% of GDP, they're not. And we are also not. He claims that the price of everything in the country is down except for beef, apparently. And he says that energy is way down. He says that gas in many places is going to be below $2 soon. And in many places, it is already $2.50. Now, he has claimed that the price of energy, just in general, so that would be, gas, natural gas, electric, all of that. He says all of that was going to be reduced 50%, cut in half in 12 months. And if you look at the national average gas price, it's gone down about 10 cents from about $3.16 when he took office to about $3.06 now. And the cheapest that I can find for an average in any state is Texas at $2.59, which is still not even at the $2.50 that he claims is everywhere and nowhere close to the $2 that he claims it's going to be nationwide any day now. In regards to beef, he says that the only reason that we have any beef in this country at all is because he put tariffs on beef coming in from other countries. As if we don't have cows here. He says again, of course, that he was single-handedly responsible for bringing the Olympics to LA, and had he not sent in the National Guard, then the Olympics would have been moved out of that city. He also says, and this is a direct quote, there's a lot of rare earth around. And then he says that we can just get rare earth from wherever we want. I'm just going to remind you that China mines 60% of all of the rare earth elements worldwide, and China processes 90% of all of the rare earth elements worldwide. So it's not just everywhere, and we definitely don't have a monopoly. China does. He says by nature, Russia and China can't be friendly. He does not expand on that. He says that 2020 was rigged, and had it not been rigged and he had won the presidency, then of course this war would have never happened, but it only happened because Putin saw that the election was rigged. He also says that we don't want Russia to have all of Ukraine, but Ukraine ceding some of their land to Russia, he's totally good with, I guess. He also said that we have $37 trillion in deficit because of tariffs. And yet he still wants to continue to put tariffs on you, the American taxpayer. He says that tariffs are responsible for ending 5, maybe 6 of the wars. And then later he says, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 6. Yesterday or 2 days ago, he said it was 4, 5, or 6. He's all over the place and again has no idea what he's talking about. And then he says, without tariffs, the US would be a laughingstock. I did go back and count. On weekdays, he spoke at least 11 in a row, and I would like for him to stop so I can get a little bit of a break from this. Not that I really hate it, but it is a little bit annoying for him to talk every single day when he doesn't say anything new. That being said, I do have someone to thank here. This person says, thanks for all your hard work, from Danny P. They sent a book, The Lion's Den. Thank you, Danny P. As always, this content that I do for you is available for free, obviously, here on TikTok. It's available for free on YouTube. It's available for free on Patreon, and it's available for free on Substack. If you like the work that I do and want to support me and allow me to do this more often and possibly even do it full time, you can feel free to subscribe to my Patreon or my Substack. Patreon is cheaper because they allow me to do a cheaper tier. You will also get additional content on there separate from what I'm doing on here for free. So like I said, if you like the content and you want to support, or you want to get additional content from me, those are options for you. Thank you guys so much for sticking around, and look at that, you have 30 seconds back of your 10 minutes.